Thank you, Hugh, and thank you all for joining. It's great to see an involved group. We're going to give you some background for our upcoming Connectathon. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Of course, this will be in Rotterdam in May. Thank you all for signing up. A little background about our UDP, Utilizing the Digital Protocol Project. We started with an ask from our International Committee of Harmonization, ICH, who was working on the Clinical Electronic Structured Harmonized Protocol, M11. That topic is has brought together actually global regulators as well as industry representatives to align on a harmonized template for clinical trial protocols, clinical study protocols, guideline for using that, as well as a technical implementation guide. We are providing a FHIR exchange implementation guide for all of that content that can be utilized for anyone adopting. This doesn't preclude other implementation guides from being created in the future and through other standards. But they have asked us as Vulcan to produce this FHIR implementation guide and also specify that we are working as well with CDISC to ensure that the controlled terminology stored in CDISC, which aligns to M11, can be utilized. And what we're doing here in Vulcan is trying to bring all that together for implementers to utilize our IG as they're trying to align to M11 and utilize other features of a digital protocol. Next slide, please. I think Hugh, you can go ahead and build this out if you don't mind. Over the last 10, 12, 15 years, there have been a lot of initiatives in this space. While this project is only a couple years old, we really have built on, from the beginning of this. Here we saw there were some efforts to harmonize on what goes into a protocol that started with the TransCelerate Common Protocol template and is now, I would say, been completed with global harmonization in ICH M11. Although that Common Protocol template has been updated as well, has some additional content within it. The next thing to do to get to a structured, fully digitized protocol is to decide what those structured elements need to be. And that really has been done through the ICH technical specification, as well as the CDISC Unified Study Definitions model, which goes into great detail, encapsulates all of M11 technical specification, and also structures additional content. Then all of that structured information has to have a model. And this is where USDM has specified exactly that model, and as well as relationships, and that model needs to be implementable. And through the Digital Data Flow project with TransCelerate and CDISC, they have been focusing on implementation of that model in various use cases across clinical development. And that we are here to really ensure that all of that information can be exchanged in a way that is interoperable and readable by many stakeholders across many systems. And of course, we have our FHIR implementation guide that we are working on finalizing for publication. Next slide. Hopefully this is a bit of a review, but did want to just highlight the inputs that we've incorporated into this IG include ICH's materials, kind of a unique project, Vulcan UDP, in that we're building on what others have created and ensuring it is compatible and exchangeable in a standard way through FHIR. So we've utilized these inputs of ICH M11, USDM, and other FHIR uses prior to this IG. So we've worked with Brian on the call from the evidence-based medicine. We've looked at other aspects of FHIR utilization established with Vulcan scheduled activities and other initiatives, and ensure that all of that is aligned here. And our goal really is long-term to be able to use FHIR to have that very granular exchange of information. This first implementation guide, we've really focused on some key elements for a structured exchange while allowing full document exchange as well. But long-term, we would plan that this implementation guide is the base, is the foundational link to these other initiatives to stay aligned with CDISC and ICH. But we hope that we can continue to build out additional uses of FHIR for more granular granular purposes of exchange for more use cases within various stakeholders. Next slide, please. Little history of our Connectathons in preparation for the upcoming one. We've had a series of exchanges over time where we've gone from, our first Connectathon was just exchanging the basic M11 protocol in FHIR. We've gotten more structured over time. We've done some iterative testing. We've aligned with other efforts. And in this next Connectathon, which Hugh will go into more detail, we're really looking to kick the tires to do that really thorough testing of this implementation guide, and starting the waves of implementation, making sure we're testing it in the context of additional protocols. So we're encouraging sponsors and others to bring protocols for testing, and in the context of how will the FHIR IG be used for development of solutions. So we are hoping that we will get some vendors to bring their own tools that we can actually test the IG against. Next slide. Just looking back, how did we get here? What's been our most recent accomplishments? Last May, we were in Madrid building on some of the earlier Connectathon foundations, and we were able to go deeper into the ICH technical specification and look particularly at control and terminology. And in Madrid, we were able to ensure we were aligning with some of the regulatory efforts that were ongoing at the same time, and really ensuring that what we are building here in Vulcan is meeting the need of the ICH M11 team. And that was our final testing before we went to ballot. And we did complete our ballot, our initial ballot last fall. If you go to the next slide. Then we progressed to our Connectathon in Pittsburgh last September. We were hot off ballot cycle, so we had some input we were incorporating that was raised during the ballot. I would say most of the feedback we got during ballot was more around the explanatory text versus the core technical aspects, but we did have some feedback we were able to address here. In this Connectathon last September, we also looked at a test that went across tracks at the Connectathon. I think it's a great opportunity, these Connectathons, to engage with other tracks that have some similar needs. And here we're able to test with the EBM track, taking content across and ensuring alignment there. If you go to the next slide, would highlight our last Connectathon, which was a virtual Connectathon, where we able to really get into sort of this final QA testing, if you will. We were also able to start exploring what our next use cases might be. So while we did do some refinement of tooling, refinement of our IG, we're also able to work with the track with another group and a sub-track, if you will, around eligibility criteria, and how we might utilize the digital protocol to go a bit further and exchange some very detailed eligibility criteria that could be machine readable in the future. Go to the next slide. And I know I'm going through this very fast, but just at a high level background, happy to talk more about this in any depth and provide these materials out if helpful. In our January virtual Connectathon, we did also have some participants bring their own protocol. It was a great opportunity to test the IG against some real life cases. Our colleagues from Japan had a protocol written in Japanese that they had aligned to the ICH M11. And we weren't exactly sure how this would work in the transformation into FHIR, but we were able to successfully prepare this protocol for exchange. There were some hiccups identified and solved on the fly within the Connectathon, but we were able to actually transmit and exchange in FHIR a Japanese-based protocol that did align to the ICH M11, not only the content and heading structure, but to the technical specification. So I think it's in some ways a simple use case, but actually a really powerful one, showing that the standard is what is driving the exchange, the structured exchange of some of this information, and allowing some flexibility for the content to be written in other languages, really shows the value of the standard. Go to the next slide. This was a virtual Connectathon that we did in January. We had an opportunity, I think, to have engage with a large group of people there. Here, we also went into more depth around looking at structuring eligibility criteria. It's an area that from our community within Vulcan and all of our users, we know that digitizing the inclusion-exclusion would allow many different use cases, anywhere from planning your protocol, feasibility, recruiting, patients identifying protocols that might be a fit for them, many use cases across stakeholders. So we're very excited to undertake this testing challenge within this Connectathon. We learned a lot. I would say my key learning, while I knew it was going to be difficult, it's even more difficult than I thought. We ran into a lot of really interesting, not necessarily technical challenges, but interesting look at how eligibility criteria are structured, where they are where some that are easily machine readable, and some that are not nearly as easily machine readable as even you might imagine when you start breaking down the very specifics of how the criteria is worded. So I think my key takeaway here, and you can see some of the detailed things we look at, but my key takeaway is, UDP, what we're building in this IG, provides a good foundation to carry that information. There's certainly more work to do in looking at how criteria can be structured, how it could be machine readable, just from a technical perspective. And then the process implementation challenges will be broad in that, are you trying to harmonize at the writing of a protocol? Is there some AI-driven tools that can help, once written, can help utilize those criteria? Which ones could be machine readable, which ones could not? There will be some more, there's a track of its own at the next Connectathon that we'll be looking at this. And we're hoping that maybe we can look across the tracks and make sure that any outputs from that continued conversation will be able to fit within the UDP IG. Interesting conversations. We go to the next slide. One more thing we did at the Connectathon is we were able to start thinking ahead around some of that eligibility and how, from a business process perspective, that might be integrated. So we gathered some great foundational information about some of the specifics of the use case. And I think this is helpful going forward in understanding where the real fine opportunities are for the digital protocol and where maybe some more work needs to happen and where there's always going to be some flexibility and maybe we aren't going to focus on digitization. I think for here, just the number, we had 19 participants. I think it's a great testament to these Connectathons bringing together different audiences, and being able to have conversations in a way that you can't always in your day-to-day. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of great conversations in Rotterdam. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hugh to talk specifically about our track plans.
Okay, thank you. So Stacey has talked you through the mechanics of what we've done in the previous Connectathon. This is a summary of what we're planning through in the upcoming Connectathon. So three major focuses to it. The protocol title page sounds a bit not a lot, but actually it's a key part of the detailed ICH M11 structured information on the protocol, and it covers things like amendments. So you're looking at the versioning, all of the naming, who your investigators are, who the formal sponsors are, who the local sponsors are, etc., etc. So from a data structure point of view and processing point of view, it's actually got quite a lot of pieces and complexity in. And for some areas, such as the amendments, it's relatively complicated to read through the ICH M11 documentation and work out exactly how they want to repeat that, because there's a lot of repeating sections and a lot of conditional things. Do you do it like this or do you do it like that? It depends on what the circumstances are. So there's quite a bit of digging into that, and we're certainly interested in people who've got experience in that to come and try out what we're doing and see that those structures work. Stacey talked about the Japanese protocol we had at the last Connectathon. That was a wonderful example of somebody bringing their own protocol and then putting it through our tooling to see whether things actually functioned. That's probably the biggest test we can put onto the specification. If people can bring their own protocol and, in a sense, sight unseen, put it through the system and get success at the other end, that's a pretty good endorsement of the way things are working. But of course, to get all these things to function, we have to have tooling to do it. And this time around, we're encouraging people to actually bring their own tools and try out their own tools on this. The structure we've followed in all of the Connectathons is actually very similar. It's about creating a protocol in the first place. It has some narrative to it, it has some structure to it, but we need to create that. We then send it to a FHIR server. We then retrieve it from a FHIR server with a different set of tooling, and we look back and say, well, is that what we were expecting to get out? Have we got back out of the system what we put into it in the first place? It's a demonstration that the data has been kept intact as it went through. So we've got an 8-box server, so we have a server available. The details are here. What we need is for people to come and actually join in, and it does two things when you join in a Connectathon. One is that it gives what we have done a good testing, and that's enormously important for the quality of what we are actually doing. But it also gives you an opportunity to test your understanding of M11, to test the tooling you've got, to test the way you're putting protocols together. And I think this is probably one of the plainest drawings I've ever put out on PowerPoint. But I wanted to stress that there's something that people can bring on every single step of this process. So this is the test process I talked about. We start off with some sort of source document, put it through some sort of authoring tool. It goes into a FHIR server. We pull it back out from the FHIR server. We end up with an output document, and we look to see if the output document's the same as the source document. So what can you do to contribute to this process? Well, bring your own protocol. Bring your own source document. What we ask is that it conforms to the M11 template. The tooling we use uses the template headings together with a certain amount of AI and a certain amount of brute force to identify where the content sits within the document and to put it in the right fields. So bringing that source document is a really helpful thing to do. We've also found that people don't necessarily appreciate all the nuances of how the document is structured So it actually helps to work through that to see that the pattern is right. As I said, we have some tooling that uses AI and brute force to get the content in. Maybe you've already got tooling that does some of this. We'd love to see some of that being tried out. And one of the benefits of doing this at a Connectathon is we've got all the experts to hand. You know, if you're sitting in your own office trying to do something and something doesn't quite work, it can take a while to work out why it doesn't work. If you're doing it sitting around a table with a set of other people who've done similar things and built some of the components to that, they very often will just look over your shoulder and say, you've missed this, or you've made this assumption. It's much quicker and easier to get things up and functioning. We provide a FHIR server. It's a standard R6 FHIR server. There is absolutely no reason why we have to use that server. We do that for convenience, but if you're using a server and you would like to see that things actually function, we can try writing to a different server. That's entirely feasible. We have an application that will read from the FHIR server and put it into a format that makes it easy to see the content, either as a protocol type document or as a hierarchical list of all the FHIR structures. Again, maybe you've got some sort of FHIR viewing tool, something you could bring to that that would give you a different view as to what the structures are. Just test out whether the way you've interpreted that actually fits with what we've done. And the output of all of this is the output document. That's what we review, that's what we check through. So there's a lot of opportunity for trying things out and for learning as you work your way through the Connectathon. So please come along to Rotterdam. They're very, very useful events. You've got till April the 17th for the early bird discount. After that it gets more expensive. The registration link is there on the slide. We will make these slides available to everybody. And with that, I will stop here for questions. Please, anything you want to know, anything you want to ask, just feel free to shout out and we'll do our best to answer.
One ask I would have of folks on the call, if there's anyone, any party, any individual, any organization you think we should be reaching out to participate, we would certainly appreciate that input. I was at the DIA Europe conference last week and talked to a number of the exhibitors and who were not maybe aware of this opportunity. So there's probably another set of audience out there who may be interested. So if you have any suggestions of who we might reach out to, please let us know.
I think we may have neglected to say that you don't have to be technically savvy. You don't have to be a FHIR expert. Protocol authors, whose primary job is actually writing the text, can tell us an awful lot about the way things fit into structures, the way in which business processes work. It's very helpful for the overall view of how these things work. So even if you don't know anything about FHIR, you've still got significant contribution that you can make to the process. Conversely, if you are working with FHIR, that expertise is great. It's a real strength to add into the analysis process and what we're doing as a whole. So don't be worried that you don't know how you're going to fit into this. We worked with the people that come to the Connectathon to give everybody the best outcome from it. I've just seen that we have a question in the chat about whether this is online or remote. This is an in-person Connectathon. It will, I'm afraid, be difficult to bring in people remotely to this. The facilities are not provided. It's meant to be an in-person. We will have another online Connectathon in January, which works well for bringing in people from right the way around the world into the timescales.
If you aren't able to attend the Connectathon and are still interested in the project, learning our outcomes, would encourage you to attend our monthly community meetings. And we also have a listserv that you can sign up for. We try to keep the Vulcan page on the UDP page on the Vulcan website up to date. I'll drop a link to that in the chat.
So if there are no more questions, thank you all for attending. We will put the slides and a link to the recording onto the Connectathon registration page, so you can go back and find them there. We'll also put links, or how to get to the links anyway, within the listserv. So if you have colleagues that you think might be interested in this, please pass on the links to those colleagues. So with that, thank you very much, and I hope we will see you in Rotterdam.